Hello and welcome to Luna, but not no Druid. Tonight it's just me. Druid is still on holiday, but that's okay. Tonight we will talk about empathy, or shall I say, about the dark side of empathy. Have you ever felt drained after being around someone, even if they weren't upset with you? Or maybe it felt like you must fix their emotions to be loved. And tonight, we're uncovering the dark side of empathy, why you feel responsible for everyone, and exactly how to stop overfunctioning in relationships. Please do let me know if you can see me and hear me properly before we jump in. Marjorie already says, how? Hello, my darling. So lovely to have you here tonight, live with us. This will be an interactive session with a bit of knowledge, a bit of exercises. I've prepared a quiz for you guys so you could go deeper within yourself. So grab a journal and let's set an intention, because by the end of this session, you'll understand your empathy patterns. You will see why you feel responsible, and you will have tools to set boundaries without guilt. So let's begin. Last week, if you haven't seen the part number 1 of the empathy series, we briefly discussed what actually empathy is. So let me remind you that empathy has 3 components, right? Cognitive empathy, which is understanding someone's perspective. Emotional empathy, which is feeling what someone else feels. And compassionate empathy, which is wanting to help. And today, we will focus on that last third component. As a quick reminder, neuroscience shows that emotional empathy activates the areas in the brain involved in processing pain. Meaning, when someone is near you and they're in distress, your brain partially mirrors their pain. And this is real. But here's the critical distinction. Empathy is the ability to feel. Over responsibility is the belief you must fix it. And that belief is learned. So the key point here is that your brain is not fully distinguished between your emotions and the emotions of others, of other people. In other words, when someone is upset, your amygdala fires, cortisol rises, the stress hormone, and your body reacts as danger is real. So this is why it feels urgent. It feels like almost like responsibility to fix things. Type in the chat. When someone is upset around you, does your body tense? Do you feel compelled to act immediately? I am curious. In the meantime, Anna and Magdalena are saying hello. So lovely to have you here tonight as well. Tonight, I want you to share your feelings, your insights as well, if you feel compelled to do so. I want this to be as much interactive as it's possible. You may ask me, Luna, but why? Why is this happening? Why do I feel responsible for other people's emotions if they're not mine? Why do I do that? So the answer is very simple. These patterns often begins in childhood because this is the childhood wiring. Environments where emotional safety was inconsistent, not necessarily abused, but unpredictable, the nervous system of a child is adaptive and it learns What do I need to do to stay safe and connected? So let's break this down. This pattern often comes from childhood where there was emotional unpredictability, conditional love, unstable caregivers, and the nervous system adapted by hyperattunement. If they're okay, I'm safe. Rescuer mentality, and I promise we will go deeper on that subject today as well. And the rescuer mentality would be, if I fix it, I survive. And then last but not least, people pleasing, approval means safety. It equals safety. So what it all means, what emotional unpredictability means. Emotions in the home were inconsistent. A parent could be warm one day, cold the next, calm in the morning but explosive at night, loving but easily overwhelmed. For a child, unpredictability equals threat. The amygdala becomes highly sensitive to emotional shifts. The nervous system becomes hyper alert, and the child constantly scans what mood are they in. This becomes a hyper attunement. It's like being an antenna for someone else's mood. So how it looks like in a real life example. Imagine you come home from school as a child, excited to share something. You open the door and you immediately scan your parents' face. If they look stressed, you go quiet. If they look irritated, you disappear into your room. But if they look calm, you engage. So you learned to read micro expressions before they could even say something. That's not personality trait. That's adaptation. And how it shows up in the adulthood. Same scene. You walk into a meeting and instantly sense tension. I'm sorry if you can hear my doggy barking. You adjust your tone before speaking. You soften yourself. You monitor everyone's emotional state before expressing your own. Your nervous system learned, if they're okay, I'm safe. So you try to keep them okay as well. You regulate them. And before I jump further ahead, I see a comment here from Marjorie. I was used to try to fix. Now I need to learn what's mine or not. I remember before meeting someone, I was happy, and afterwards I left angry. I realized afterwards that I absorbed her anger. And that's a great example of how often we empaths absorb other people's emotions, especially those negative, because negative emotions are drawn to the light. Negative emotions will always want to find a sponge to inhale them. I mentioned conditional love. What it means. Conditional love means that love is present, yes, but not steady. Affection increased when you performed well. Yes, approval came when you behaved. Connection was stronger when you were helpful. This teaches the brain that love must be earned. The child links approval to survival. Dopamine gets released when the child gets praised. Stress hormone spikes when the child is criticized, and your brain wires connection to performance. So in adult life, or okay, let's start with a child. because that's going to be easier to imagine for you. You get praised for being a good boy or a good girl, for being helpful, for being easy. You are the child who doesn't cause trouble. When you cry or express your anger, you're being told that you're either too dramatic or don't be dramatic, stop overreacting, be good, calm down, calm yourself. And you learn that your needs create distance, that being useful creates connection. And how it shows up in your adult life, you may ask. Well, you feel guilty resting. You overgive in relationships. You say yes when you feel exhausted. You mistake being needed with being loved. And if someone is disappointed in you, your body reacts like rejection, because approval equals safety. So you manage emotions to maintain approval. I mentioned also unstable or overwhelmed caregivers, right? So sometimes caregivers were emotionally fragile, depressed, anxious, easily stressed, needing support themselves. And the child consciously steps into the regulation mode. This is called parentification. The child becomes the emotional stabilizer. Let's say your parent vents to you about their marriage. You comfort them as a good child. You try to lighten the mood. You feel responsible for making them smile. Or you sense your parent is overwhelmed, so you minimize your needs. You don't ask for help. You don't burden them. You become low maintenance. You learned, if I fix, I survive. So, how does this show up in your adult life, right? Well, you feel responsible for your partner's stress. You manage your friends' emotions. You overfunction at work. You attract people who need help and feel drawn to fixing them because your nervous system sees fixing equals stability. I hope this is clear to you. Marjorie says, it's like to think how to talk to someone to avoid to hurt them or create any discomfort to the other person. Exactly. This is exhausting. And Magda says, brilliant topic, very close to my heart. The inspiration came from working with a very special client, as well as a big response from your side, guys, after the first part, which I really appreciate. Let's go back, because right now I want to talk about something really, really important. Where this over responsibility comes from. Again, often, most likely, it comes from the childhood environment where you had to be the mature one. Emotions were unpredictable, caregivers were overwhelmed, and love felt conditional, same as above. And your nervous system adapted. You became hyper attuned. You learned, if I manage the emotional climate, the emotional state of others, I stay safe. The pattern becomes automatic. You walk into tension, you regulate it. Someone is upset, you fix it. Someone withdraws, you chase. Not because you're weak, but because your brain learned that connection depends on your performance. And this is where it gets darker, because this often creates the guilt loop. You feel guilty when someone is disappointed, when someone is angry, when someone withdraws, when someone struggles, even if you didn't cause it. This happens because your nervous system confuses discomfort with anger, with danger. When someone is dysregulated, your body activates. Yes, amygdala fires, cortisol rises, and you interpret their emotions as threat. So you move into action. You explain, or shall I say, over explain. You overgive and you self sacrifice. Why? To feel relief, because you feel relief when they calm down. That's your nervous system returning to its baseline. The truth is, you didn't solve their problem. You regulated your anxiety and let that land. Now, think of the last time you felt guilty for not helping, not fixing, or not saying yes to something. What exactly triggered the guilt? If you want to, you can share in the comments. Was it the disappointment of the other person? Was it their silence, their withdrawal? Think about it for a second. You can type it in the chat. Notice, where do you feel that guilt in your body? Is it a chest pressure? Maybe it's somewhere in the stomach. Maybe it's tight throat. Notice, where do you feel it in the body? I hope you found it. If you have, it's good. Because that sensation is not morality. It's conditioning. And when something is conditioned, the good news about it is that it can be easily rewired. So you can say internally to yourself, guilt is a learned alarm and not a proof that I did something wrong. And yes, you can feel guilt and still choose self-respect. And that's where the shift happens. Because for many empaths, guilt equals dangers. But guilt is often just your nervous system reacting to a broken pattern. Because you're not bad. You're just doing something new. And if you're doing something new, that feels unsafe. And new feels unsafe until it doesn't. Simple as it is. Now, another question, and I want you to ask yourself honestly. When someone near you is upset, do you feel concern, anxiety, or urgency? You can type in the comments A, B, or C. Concern for A, anxiety for B, or urgency for C. And there is a comment here from Magdalena. Yes, this very much helps from childhood, especially for the oldest child, as the ways to regulate themselves and how to regulate the entire unit as family. And Marjorie here says, it's like if I fix it, I don't disappear. Guilt is mostly present on the stomach. If you chose urgency as your answer, that's not empathy. That's fear. Just to let you know. So here's the line. Empathy or empaths say, I see your pain. But often empathy, unregulated empathy, means self-abandonment. And I want you to understand this, that self-abandonment says, I will neglect myself to reduce your pain. So if you constantly override your fatigue, your boundaries, your needs, your truth to keep peace, this is not kindness. This is self-abandonment. And over time, this can turn into resentment because the part of you knows you are carrying too much. Many empaths build unconsciously an identity around being the strong one, the fixer, the safe one, the therapist friend. Certainly have done that, been and done that. So let's talk about the rescuer identity. It feels valuable. It feels needed, important, but it creates a dangerous dynamic because you attract people who need regulation. Because your identity is built around providing it. And here's the uncomfortable truth. If you stop overfunctioning, some relationships would collapse. And that's not loss. That's just information. It's what it is. So how to stop overfunctioning in relationships? Overfunctioning is taking responsibility for other people's growth, choices, their emotions. High functioning empaths often attract dependent or needy partners, friends, and colleagues, which leads to burnout, resentment, and imbalance. Let's say you text your partner to check their mood 5 times a day because you feel responsible for their happiness. Who's guilty of that? So think of a relationship where you overfunction. What would happen if you just stopped taking responsibility? Give yourself a moment to reflect on that. You can type it in the chat. Feel free to share if that's something you feel to do. And I want you to remember that your role is not to manage anyone's emotions. And this is how you reframe that. You can care without caring. And I will say it many times. You can care without caring. Your role is not to manage anyone's emotions. Because it's all heavy, it's all difficult, so I have something more fun for you right now. Because we're talking here about the dark side of the empathy, let's see which type of a dark side empath you are. So for each scenario, pick the letter that best describes how you usually respond. Keep your first instinct, okay? If you have a piece of paper and a pen, that would be handy to have it right now so you could write down your answers. This is going to be a quiz. I'm going to read you the questions and the answers. I hope you're ready. Question number 1. A friend calls upset about a personal problem. You A. Drop everything to help and give advice immediately. B. Try to calm things down and avoid conflict at all costs. C. You feel drained by their emotions and struggle to stay neutral. And D. You over explain your own perspective to make sure you aren't blamed. A, B, C, or D. I hope the tempo is right for you. Let's move to question number 2. Someone close to you criticizes a choice you made. You A. Apologize and try to fix what they're upset about. B. Avoid confrontation, hoping it passes quickly. C. You take it on internally and feel their disappointment in your body. And D. Explain your reasons in detail, sometimes over text or an email. Make a note of which is resonating with you the most. And question number 3. When someone needs help, you jump in before they even ask. You feel compelled to fix it. That was the answer number A. B. Step in quietly to maintain peace, even if you don't fully agree. C. When someone needs your help, you absorb their stress, feel exhausted afterwards, and need alone time. Or D. Break down your reasoning step by step, making sure they understand your help is valid. Write down your answer. Question number 4. In a group setting, you A. Often take over to make sure everything runs smoothly. B. You keep quiet to avoid rocking the boat. C. In a group setting, you feel overwhelmed by the energy and emotions of others. Or D. You over-explain your ideas repeatedly to avoid misunderstanding or conflict. Remember, mark the one which is most suitable for you. Question number 5. Your main inner belief about helping others is if you don't help something, answer A. If I don't help, something bad will happen or I'll be rejected. Answer B. If I express my truth, people will get upset. I must keep peace. Answer C. I feel everything, and if I absorb it, I can manage the situation. Or D. I must explain myself perfectly or I'm at fault. I'll give you a few seconds to see what is the main letter for you. Feel free to share in the chat as well if you wish to do so. And I will give you the results. If you chose mostly A, you are the rescuer. If you chose mostly B, you are the peacemaker. If you chose mostly C, you are the emotional sponge. If you chose the answer D, you are the over-explainer. So let me break this down for you. Mostly A, the rescuer. You're constantly fixing, over-functioning, and guilt-driven. You notice a friend struggling and you cancel your plans to help, even if it costs you something. And the tip here is to practice observing and asking instead of immediately solving. If you chose B, you are the peacemaker. You agreed to something you don't want because you fear tension, right? So conflict, or you do everything to avoid the conflict. You're self suppressing and you're harmony driven. It's important for you to feel the harmony. And the tip here is to practice tolerating discomfort and speaking your truth. If you are the emotional sponge, most C's, you leave a family dinner feeling drained from others, from their energies. You don't like to be in surroundings where there is plenty of people. Because you absorb emotions, you struggle to identify what is yours, which emotions belong to you, and which belong to others. And the tip here is to use emotional observation and reset anchors to separate feelings. We talked about it last week, and I will talk about it today as well, a little bit. And if you're the over explainer, then mostly D, you text a 5 paragraph justification for saying no. You over explain yourself. You fear being misunderstood. You feel responsible for perception, the way people see you. And the tip here is to practice firm boundaries without excess explanation. No is a simple answer, and it's a full sentence. So, which one you are? Rescuer, constantly helping, peacemaker, who avoids conflict, suppresses needs, emotional sponge, who absorbs moods and feels drained after social contact, or the over explainer, over justifying boundaries and fears being misunderstood. I want you to remember that awareness is the first step, always. Awareness itself can be healing. Once you see the pattern, you can actually intervene and interrupt the pattern. Jacqueline here says, mostly C and 2 A's. Yes, it all makes sense. Marjorie says, my main letters is C. And Magda says, I will need to do it again as I didn't write down. Make sure to make that test because it's really interesting to find out which type is yours. So let's talk about some practical tools, how to interrupt those patterns. First of all, separate feeling from responsibility. When someone is upset, say internally or even out loud, this is theirs. I can care without caring. And practice observing without absorbing. Observing without absorbing. Secondly, tolerate discomfort. Let someone be disappointed. Don't rush to fix. Just notice that you are safe. Your nervous system must learn that disapproval is not abandonment. Those things are not equal. And perhaps a good pattern interruption would also be to just stop volunteering. Before stepping in, ask yourself, did they ask for support, or am I doing this to reduce my own anxiety? Because high level empathy is very responsive. However, it shouldn't be intrusive. It shouldn't be given without being asked for it. So just to reframe all of this, remember that as an empath, You are not responsible for other people's emotions. You are not responsible for fixing their trauma. You are not responsible for preventing their discomfort or managing their reactions. Remember that empathy is your strength and use it so it would work for you and not against you. But this only works when it's paired with boundaries. Because as I said before, without boundaries, empathy becomes self betrayal. So let's talk about how to say no without guilt. Because boundaries are a tool, not a punishment. I get often asked how to set boundaries. First step, state them clearly. I am not available for that right now. No. If it's needed, repeat it. I understand your point of view, but it still doesn't work for me. Without any explanation whatsoever, just state your ground and stay with the boundary. If that's not enough, end it without justification. Just simply say, I am not discussing this further. No is a no. Perhaps you've experienced recently a situation where you were struggling with saying no. You can type it in the chat if you want to share, so we could see how you could reframe it in the future. My extra advice is to stop over apologizing, because apologies means you did something wrong, and that's not true. And validate your own needs before others. Remember, you always come first. Your well-being, excuse me, comes first. I want you to remember that discomfort is not dangerous. Saying no is not selfish. It is actually self-respect. So start to observe yourself, your emotions. We talked about it last week a little bit. Ask yourself, is this mine or is this belong to other person? Are those feelings mine or theirs? And anchor neutrality. You can place the hand on your chest and say, I am safe. I am separate. Stop rescuing. By doing so, you can, maybe I'll put it a different way. Identify one small situation, perhaps today, or where you would normally jump in. See that situation again and pause. Observe. And instead of jumping in and trying to fix it, let the other person handle it. Because you're not responsible for their needs. You are responsible to regulate yourself. If you have any questions, now would be a good time to ask them. Marjorie here says, first, I didn't know what boundaries were. Boundaries are so difficult to set for me. I was recently judged. I'm not going to be afraid to call it a judgment for how strongly I can form and state my boundaries. Because with boundaries, many people will want to use the fact that empaths have problems with setting them. And often, when we learn how to set boundaries and how to keep them up and how to protect those boundaries, because setting boundaries is one thing, but making other people respect them is a totally different thing. Because can be theory and the other one is actually practice. But when we learn how to set our boundaries and protect them, those who were taking advantage from situations when we actually didn't have those boundaries are usually the ones who will say, "You changed. You are not the same anymore." Those will be people who will criticize you the most for setting those boundaries. And that's, I think, what was the case for me as well. So let's reframe everything and summarize that empathy is not weakness. But when it becomes over responsibility, it is self-abandonment. And I want to let that sink in. The dark side of empathy is not feeling too much. It's feeling obligated to manage everything. You are not responsible for others' emotions. You are responsible for your boundaries, your energy, and your own growth. So start small, practice, reframe, strengthen your nervous system. And how? I encourage you to watch episode number 1 of this series, when I gave a lot of somatic practices on how to regulate and soften the nervous system. Because remember, softness with boundaries, this is where the real power is. Not guilt, not burnout, true power. Because the truth is, the dark side of empathy is not that you feel deeply, it's that you were trained that love comes with responsibility, that it is your responsibility to fix everybody around you. And you don't need less empathy. You don't need to feel less. You need less guilt. You need less urgency. And you need more self-trust. And next time someone is dysregulated next to you, instead of asking, "How do I fix this?" ask, "Is this actually mine?" And this question alone will begin to set you free. Marjorie is laughing. You became stubborn now. Yes, some people can see this as my stubbornness, but I've learned the hard way. If you have any questions, guys, feel free to ask them. Let me know if you want a part 3 of this, because let's be honest, I can go deep, deep, deep into this rabbit hole. I could potentially talk about how to empower yourself. Maybe you have an idea or a question which I could build on. But now, let's see what the cards have to say. I will just quickly shuffle them and let's see what is the message for those who struggle with overgiving, with the need of fixing others, with the guilt. Few cards, that's interesting. And there is an extra message here, actually 2 messages. I'll start with the cards which appeared. Beautiful. Restore yourself with alone time. So for many of you, being alone in the world of nature will help you to regulate your emotions. Take a break from the busy world. Replenish yourself in the stillness. Meditate, stretch, nap, garden. Do whatever quiet activates your spirit yearns for. Perhaps it's going for a trip overseas. Alone time is important and needed to regulate yourself. Retreat to the natural world. Go where you feel most alive. A peaceful forest, the mountains, your local park. Let the ocean roar through you. Be revived by nature's wonder. We talked about being in nature last week as well. And this is an extra advice for this week because the energy feels quite heavy recently with the shift, with the solar eclipse, with the new moon yesterday, with the new Chinese New Year being a fire horse year. There is something bubbling underneath the surface, and some of you may feel it. So retreat into yourself. David says here, this can become a really bad habit, being an empath by nature, feeling a responsibility that you have to be the rescuer. You don't. It's not your responsibility. So here's the message. Nourish your body. If you are tired, rest. If you are in pain, pamper yourself rather than punishing or pushing through it. Treat your body as precious friend. Listen to its needs. Beautiful card. And I am using the Empath's Empowerment deck by Judith Orloff. She's a specialist when it comes to working with empathy. I recommend her work, her books, her cards. Watch for a cosmic wink. Magic comes when spirit winks at us. Stay aware of synchronicities that provide unexpected answers. Positive forces are always at play in your life. So perhaps some of you here are wondering, are waiting for an extra sign from the universe, are wondering, how could I resolve this problem? How could I approach this mystery I have? Open your eyes and allow yourself to feel. Use your gift to observe and sense, because the universe is trying to connect with you. Embrace your imperfections with those butterflies. There is a transformation in accepting what's not perfect. I'm trying to show you the bowl here. Do you see? It's broken, but it actually, the patterns make it unique and beautiful. Release the idea that you must be without flaws. Humans are imperfect, messy, and also miraculous. Simply aim to be the best person possible. I'll show you the card again. 2 more cards. Meditate. When you are stuck, picture yourself in an open, airy space with a room to move and breathe. Let yourself feel free and empowered. Meditate on the spaciousness of air. This is also an extra sign and a reminder to use the breathing techniques I told you last week. Box breathing to regulate the nervous system. And last but not least, identify your emotional triggers. We absorb the emotions of others that remain unhealed in ourselves. Notice your triggers, such as anger and fear, and gently begin to heal them. The anger has been recently something coming up for me and showing up, and it's an interesting emotion for me because I rarely experience that. So when I do, I always pay attention to what is it showing me? What is it teaching me? I hope this was helpful and that you've learned something about yourself today. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. You can write it in the comments as well below this video, or you can contact directly me. Our email addresses, Jan's and mine, are available on our channel, so feel free to use it. Some of you have also my phone number, so if you need me, you can always call me. And that's it for tonight, my dear friends. I hope I could share some light over the dark side of the empathy, because that's something which is not talked about enough, I feel. Thank you so much for being here with me tonight, joining me. I love you so much, and I'm sending you love and light. Take care, and see you next week. Bye bye.